All right, welcome to the booth. Brian David Marshall here with Ian Duke, and we are getting ready to watch Gerry Thompson versus Alexander Hayne. These guys are playing for their tournament life. Let's get down to the action. Hello and welcome to round 11 of Pro Tour Battle for Zendikar. I'm Brian David Marshall, joined by Ian Duke of Inside R&D, and we are watching a battle of two players sitting here at 7-3. There you see Gerry Thompson, he of the one Pro Tour top 8, many GP top 8s, and infinite deck designs. One of the great deck builders of Standard, facing off against Alexander Hayne, the Pro Tour champion, a former Rookie of the Year, and a member of the World Magic Cup this year for the Canadian national team. Ground his way in.
Yeah, two fantastic players.
Yeah. What does the matchup look like here?
So I'm pretty excited by both these deck lists. We'll start with Alexander Hayne. He's playing blue-black, and he is very heavy on ingest process synergy. As you can see, starting off with a sludge crawler, but he's got plenty of ways to make use of his opponent's exiled cards, so we'll see a few of those coming up.
I got to tell you something about sludge crawler. It takes a lot for a one-drop to impress John Finkel. And he's like, this card's great.
It is great. Yeah, I mean, the ability to, first of all, sometimes it just gets in a couple times as your opponent's developing and sets you up for your processing, but also the ability just to pump it up later in the game gives it a lot of late-game utility.
It scales really well, right?
Gerry, on the other hand, he's playing one of the color combinations we haven't seen too much in the feature match area this weekend. He is playing black-green tokens and sacrifice.
Oh, wow. Okay. And
you
there's
can
the
see starts off
Voracious
with
Null.
Voracious Null. Yeah, one of the hallmark cards of this strategy. So we're going to see him making lots of Eldrazi Scions, using them to power up things like Bone Splinters, getting value off of Zulaport Cutthroat, and so on and so forth.
Gerry Thompson, by the way, playing to be 6-0 in draft this weekend.
Yeah, he's been doing fantastic in Limited. I talked to him yesterday. He said he was sort of his team's guide for the Limited format. He put a lot of hours in, and he said he was sort of training up his team and trying to get them to understand the format. And he said the key to the format is synergy. He wants to jump into a deck, get a lot of cards that are working together, commit to his strategy and make sure his deck is cohesive rather than trying to grab individually powerful cards. And I mean, this is a great example of that, how he's ended up on this sort of token sacrifice deck.
Eyeless Watcher, Carrier Thrall are his last two plays here. Oh, I'm sorry, the Carrier Thrall was Alexander Hayne. There's the Eyeless Watcher there from Gerry Thompson.
And these tokens are lining up in a fantastic way against Alexander Hayne's Sludge Crawlers here. I don't think any of these attacks are really profitable for him.
So both these players 7-3, and one more loss kind of means probably not going to be able to top 8. Obviously, still get to fight for position, pro points, all that kind of fun stuff down the stretch. But as long as you have that 3 at the end of your results, you're still in contention for the top 8, and you could put together a 5-0 standard run. 4-0-1 maybe. You're into you could be into the top 8. So is that a
grave birthing?
Grave birthing for.
Yeah. Just getting a little bit of value, exiling a card.
Oh, no, that was Swarm Surge.
Oh, Swarm Surge.
Yeah,
okay, this is a card you've been pretty familiar with. You should recognize this one after last night's draft.
I played 3 of these in my deck last night. Very similar deck to what we're seeing from Alexander Hayne here.
Yeah, and that lets those Sludge Crawlers get through, ingesting a couple more cards. So Alexander Hayne not going to be short on ammunition as far as his processors go for the rest of this game. And we do see he has a Blight Herder and a Ulamog's Nullifier in his hand.
Blight Herder is so good.
Yeah, both those cards are
in this
fantastic.
deck, right? Like it can be a little medium in decks where you have more of the incidental exile. But where you're really actively ingesting, that card is just unbelievable.
Yep, for 5 mana you get a 7/8 worth of power spread among 4 bodies.
And if you happen to be playing Swarm Surges.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. Ulamog's Nullifier is no slouch either. But here comes Gerry with a pretty aggressive attack here.
Puts the Carrier Thrall in front of. Wow. Something big.
Oh, wow.
And it don't look good.
That is
Who are you going to call?
Plated
Crusher.
This is a card I think that is stronger than it would seem to most players in this format.
This is a top 10 uncommon in the set over a lot of rares talking to the pro teams. And this is among teams that hate green.
Yeah. And, I mean, you look at the stats in this card. You know, it's a 7-mana, 7/6 Trampler. You may have played core sets before with Duskdale Worm, 7-mana, 7/7 Trampler. That card's okay. It's not anything to write home about. It's good. It's solid. You'll play it. You'll be happy. But the Hexproof, I think, is what really makes this card just immune to any removal spell. And Trample in this format is so huge. Just going right over those Eldrazi Scions and little allies and other blockers, putting massive pressure on the opponent. Looks like is that a Smothering Abomination from Alexander Hayne? Using the Scion that he got from his Carrier Thrall. Unfortunately, missed his 4th land drop. Otherwise, he could get some value out of sacrificing that Scion, but more value to come, presumably, for him.
Trample Hexproof, he's going to be taking a beating here these next couple turns.
Oh, yeah. Gerry with a Myers Malice in hand.
Oh, wow.
This is a card that I like quite a bit. Just a lot of value.
I mean this as a compliment, but I'm going to sneer when I say it. You would.
I am the world's biggest Mournwelk fan, if anyone remembers that card from Lorwyn Draft. I love me a Mind Rot.
Meanwhile, take 7. Okay, well, and there you see Myers Malice with the Awaken. So discard 2 cards. Oh, by the way, I have a 3/3 that's going to come online next turn.
Fun fact about Myers Malice, it may be the oldest card in Battle for Zendikar, in the sense that it was probably the first one to be designed and stuck exactly as is with the same numbers and effect.
Oh, wow. That's a card I've definitely seen going up in people's pick orders as the format's evolved. Your turn. Is that a Guardian of Tazim?
And Ulamog's Nullifier. Talk about value. Like, you have to be both delighted and terrified when your opponent discards those 2 cards.
While I am both grateful my opponent only drew 3 lands, I'm worried that he might draw more than that in the future games.
Yes, and you have to imagine, geez, what did you keep?
Yeah.
If you discarded those 2
Here's a
powerful cards.
Mindraker.
That gets Gerry's last card, which was a Grave Birthing.
7.
Gerry's down to 7 here. Like, is there a way that Hayne can do 7 damage next turn? He can certainly do 6 if he draws a Swarm Surge.
Yeah. So Gerry presenting a lethal attack there, forcing a block, which is great because I'm sure he knows Swarm Surge is one of the only cards he really needs to be afraid of, and just chipping away at Alexander Hayne's creature base
And so
is
we'll
a great way to
see
protect himself.
if Hayne scoops.
Yeah, this is where the Hexproof is just
Oh,
phenomenal.
look at this.
here.
He also drew a Blight Herder.
Oh, wow.
Can he stay alive?
He may just be able to. That Blight Herder gives him 8 points of toughness.
Can he afford to attack? He can't afford to
Defense.
attack here. Natural Connection for Gerry Thompson. Wow. I guess he figures if he gets to untap, he's just going to win this game. So on one of the back tables, John Stern, also on a blue-black Devoid deck, has... I'm sorry, Ricky Chin is on the blue-black deck, has taken game 1 against John Stern. John Stern, one of the handful of players in our feature match area looking to go 6-0 in limited. Ricky Chin looking to stop him, and half the way there.
Oh, is that a Zulaport cutthroat off the top for Gerry? Fantastic. That really changes the flavor of this game here. Alexander Hayne now in a tough position. Does he want to sacrifice one or more of his Eldrazi Scions in response to the Zulaport cutthroat does not trigger off of your opponent's creatures. So Hayne's still okay as far as sacrificing his Scions, but what this is going to do is let Gerry potentially set up an attack, and he does with his Eyeless Watcher and Plated Crusher. Now Hayne has to be careful about worrying about trample damage and about these creatures going to the graveyard.
Wow.
So, I mean, one potential block from Hayne is putting the Blight Herder and the Smothering Abomination in front of the Plated Crusher. That lets Gerry pick one of the two to kill, letting the Eyeless Watcher through, and so Hayne would take 2 from
And then
that.
he would die from the Plated Crusher dying. Because of the Zulaport Enforcer's ability. I mean, Zulaport Cutthroat's ability.
He'll take 1 from the Eyeless Watcher, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
And
You're
1
right.
from the Plated Crusher dying. So that would leave Hayne at 1 life. So I think that's probably the block that I like here.
And that looks like what he's lining up.
But then forever after, Hayne has to make sure that none of Gerry's creatures die and has to beat Gerry without that happening.
Well, interestingly, he can do that.
Well, it depends what Gerry decides to kill here. I mean,
yes.
The Blight Herder is the larger creature, so that's sort of the default option to kill. But the Smothering Abomination also appealing to kill here, since it does have flying and does threaten to give Hayne more value.
Yeah, he puts the
Blight Herder first.
Yeah.
So Hayne now at 1 life, staring down a Zulaport Cutthroat, needs to find a way to win the game without Gerry's creatures dying.
Well, if he plays Swarm Surge here and attacks with just his tokens. Oh.
Yeah. Because
all
he
the
can
damage is dealt simultaneously.
He can sacrifice whatever. Yeah, all the damage is dealt simultaneously for one thing, but also he could always sacrifice a Scion.
But if he's going to block the Blight Herder.
No, sorry, it was the Smothering Abomination that lived there.
Oh,
so
it was the Smothering. Okay.
Yeah, so 6 coming through no matter what, and at least 4 more from the Scions.
Sure.
Plus, if something goes wrong.
All right, well, we'll be back to see how this plays out right after these messages.
Put your game to the test at a Grand Prix. These open tournaments feature the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros. Upcoming Grand Prix include Beijing, Quebec City, Porto Alegre, Lyon, and Indianapolis. Visit magic.wizards.com/Grand Prix for a complete schedule. Join the battle! Battle for Zendikar is now available on Magic Online. Explore the new set by signing up for Magic Online at mtgo.com.
All right, Ian, tell us exactly what happened there.
So Alexander Hayne won that game off of Swarm Surge, giving all of his colorless creatures +2/+0 and first strike. He attacked Gerry Thompson. Gerry Thompson had a Zulaport Cutthroat that could block a Scion, representing a trigger that would make Hayne lose 1 life, but all the damage from the first strike was dealt simultaneously, so Gerry actually died before that trigger even went on the stack. So Alexander Hayne was the winner of that first game.
Okay, sounds like we are going to peek in here on Kenji Samora versus Martin Mueller. Martin Mueller up 1-0. See green, white, black allies, it looks like. With a little bit of... and a giant veteran war leader being blocked by everything, almost everything Kenji can put in front of it. It now has trample. There's all sorts of things going on in Martin Mueller's deck. He's got black-white life gain. He's got allies. He's got scions. Samora goes down to 5 here. Void Attendance to play from Kenji Samura. Drana's Emissary does what it does on upkeep. Serene Steward in play, so puts another counter on the veteran war leader. So he's got uncommon build-arounds in 3 different pairs here.
Yeah, that's pretty good for him. We've seen, players really trying to leverage the synergy of whatever color combination, whatever 2-color combination they're in. Why not add a third? Now you have 3 color pairs worth of synergy to leverage from.
And that's actually what he's doing. War Leader is a rare, but I mean, he's got ally synergies, vampire synergies, and scion synergies. And the scion synergies are mostly making veteran War Leader huge.
Crunch. Now, bear in mind, veteran war leader can gain trample by tapping an ally.
That's the hand from Kenji Samura. Martin Mueller wins the match against the Pro Tour Hall of Famer from Japan. Great job by Martin Mueller. Fascinating looking deck.
Yeah, it looked very cool.
All right, let's take a peek here at what's going on between John Stern and Ricky Chin. Couple of Canadian players here. You get a look at the table. Looks like Ricky Chin, we already told you, has a blue-black ingester processor deck. Chin is up a game here. There's a Grove Rumbler on the board for John Stern. He's playing Jund colors. And has Touch of the Void there. All right, well, the Grove Rumbler rumbles. Let's go back to our main match between Gerry Thompson and Alexander Hayne. As these two guys fight for their tournament life, both players have 3 losses. Another loss will be more or less fatal to their top 8 hopes. And we are underway. There's a Zulaport Cutthroat for Gerry Thompson. There is a Carrier Thrall for Alexander Hayne. There you get a look at Gerry Thompson's stats. He's got the 1 Pro Tour top 8. He's got 9 Grand Prix top 8s. And a really busty nearly 63% win percentage at Grand Prix. There you get a look at him. One of the just truly great deck builders in the game. Former Rookie of the Year, Pro Tour champion, multiple-time Canadian national champion, Alexander Hayne. End of turn, a Natural Connection from Gerry Thompson. He's got a Tajuru Beastmaster, and it looks like possibly another Cutthroat in hand.
Jerry's White Splash is for Retreat to Emeria, which you've seen is very strong with all these ally synergies and sacrifice synergies.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, just for Retreat to Emeria, Matt Sperling playing in Evolving Wilds. It didn't really get a 3rd color in his deck. Mm-hmm. It was just mostly there for Retreat to Emeria synergies. Second Cutthroat.
So Gerry with, laying the groundwork for good synergy coming forward, but a little bit of a clunky draw, not really getting on board in a huge way too early on here.
Gerry, of course, looking to become one of a handful of players to go 6-0 in Limited at this first Pro Tour of the season and jump out into the lead for that Limited Master title that is going to earn a spot at the end of the season for the World Championship.
3.
Attack with both creatures. No pump on the Sludge Crawler. Oh, but it ingests the Retreat to Emeria. It's like the opposite of a top deck somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that a Ruination Guide? The post-combat Ruination Guide
Post-combat.
gets a chuckle. But Alexander wanted to keep the threat of being able to double pump his Sludge Crawler up. And there is the Tajura Beastmaster.
This is a card Gerry said impressed him quite a lot in testing. He said, the first time he picked it, he's like, it's a 6-mana 5/5. I need something at the top of my curve. It'll be fine. But when he played with it, he said, wow, this is actually really, really good.
Well,
here.
you see right there, it pumps the 2 Cutthroats. He's able to get in for a little extra damage.
Yeah. And, if you have a deck with a lot of allies, it can be an anthem for your team for multiple turns in a row.
2 cards? Yes.
Jerry's down to 2 cards. Fistful of cards for Alexander Hayne. One of the cards in Thompson's hand is Myers Malice. So he's going to be able to trim a couple of those cards away from Hayne.
Looks like Hayne may be holding on to a couple lands, though, for just that reason.
We're going to see adverse conditions here. Yeah, he's going to tap down a Cutthroat, tap down the Fatty.
7.
He's going to get in for 7. 3 from the Guide, a bonus on the Sludge Crawler, and 2 from the Thrall. He gets to ingest 2 cards. Ooh,
Ingest a Plated Crusher and Tajuru Warcaller.
These bottom decks have been insane for Alexander Hayne here.
Of course, it always feels bad to see, your strong cards get ingested, but, those of us who've been playing for a while kind of know to just disregard that. I mean, they're random cards anyway, and you're drawing a random
feels
card.
good.
So it's mostly just a psychological effect. But yeah, it still feels, BDM. It feels.
There is Myers Malice animating a land and gets 2 lands out of Hayne's hand. Here comes a Swarm Surge. And everybody gets in. So that's a 3/1 Scion, a 5/2 First Striking Ruination Guide, a 4/1 First Striking. I'm sorry, actually both 4/1 First Striking, the Scion and the Sludge Crawler. And yes, you can eat my Carrier Thrall.
I have to jump 2 colors things.
Yep, you hear Gerry. He's at 8, so if either of those 4/1s get through.
Wow, Swarm Search has been impressive this match. You don't often think of a sorcery speed pump spell like that. Really.
It's just so difficult to block.
Yeah. And it often,
First strike damage.
refunds the card disadvantage by forcing your opponent to chump block it.
Yeah.
Take 3. 4. For 4.
And sometimes also forcing through an ingest creature early in the game. And then thereby turning on the ability of another card in your
First
hand.
strike damage, you stay at 8, and I go to 12.
Yep. And then I take.
And then you take 4. Down to 4. Go.
So Gerry dropping down to just 4 life. And with a swamp off the top, not a lot of help.
Can he get out of this?
Go.
Plays land, says go. This is where you see that Sludge Crawler really shine here. Play another land, and it represents 5 damage if it's unblocked. If you do block it, it can eat everything on the board. But there is a card. Oh, no!
Grave birthing from Gerry. Trying to make another blocker is met with an Ulamog's Nullifier.
Wow, Ulamog Nullifier for the win from Alexander Hayne. Gerry Thompson will not go to 6-0 in limited.
Wow, great example of the blue-black deck synergies really working there for Alexander Hayne.
Alexander Hayne, by the way, 8-3, still very much alive. If he can rattle off 4 wins in a row in Standard, he could be looking at another top 8 here.
Well, good luck to him.
So now we're looking in on someone who has no shortage of Pro Tour top 8s, and that is Paulo Vitor Damarosa playing against King of the Hill, Christian Calcano. Both of these players are 9-1. And those 9 wins line up nicely with Paulo Vitor Damarosa's 9 Pro Tour top 8s. He's been making Ugin's Insight and Wavewing Elemental look good all draft. And he just got to scry 6, draw 3 with those 2 cards.
Wow. And in he comes. Turn against
Spell Shrivel. Wow. And that is the match. We have a new King of the Hill.
Fantastic.
It is Hall of Famer Paulo Vitor Damarosa, 10-1, going into Standard with a deck that just performed mightily for him.
Yeah, and
he didn't lose in Standard
Awesome
yesterday.
job navigating the draft for Paulo there. We saw his draft. As of the end of Pack 1, it was looking really rocky, but he navigated his way through that and 3-0'd his table.
Yeah.
Just awesome for him.
So here we go. We are now at the Canadian showdown between John Stern and Ricky Chin. John Stern looking to go 6-0 in limited here. But it looks like we have a result. We're about to go to game 3. So let's see if I can find out who won that game as we... Okay, John Stern won. Ricky Chin was up a game. John Stern just won that game. And we are going to have a game 3 between these 2 Canadian players.
Yeah, John Stern, a big name in Canadian Magic for quite some time now.
At several different times in Canadian Magic's history.
That's right, yeah. I know I've played against him a couple times, I think, at Legacy Grand Prix many years ago.
Yeah.
He's well known for his love of Eternal formats. And all Magic formats, too. Just definitely one of the stronger players as a mainstay on the Pro Tour.
We've talked a lot about the rise of Canadian Magic since Alexander Hayne won Pro Tour Avacyn Restored, and the face-to-face games, mana deprived group of players, and you see 3 Canadians here in the feature match area. Sort of almost halfway through day 2. It's really been an impressive run that Stern and Hayne have really been the champions for.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you how community plays a role in professional Magic. I mean, all it takes is for a group of players in a particular country, in a particular area, to kind of form to nucleate a little community there, and then they get together and just kind of feed off of each other and get better and better and better.
I mean, cliches become cliches for a very good reason, right? Like when you talk to a player about how do you improve at Magic, there's one answer that they always say, and that's find people who are better than you and play with them.
Yeah.
And
you get this sort of leapfrog effect where you're all trying to surpass each other, learning from each other, and just building on that. And it's a fantastic part of the game.
So, the new RTQ system has been in place now for a couple of years. Chin, a recipient of one of those invites, is kicking off his Pro Tour career here. This is his first Pro Tour. So, playing against someone he's probably looked up to. If he's someone, an aspiring Canadian Magic player looking, he has to get past John Stern here. So, John Stern's just playing here forever. Both these players are 8-2. So, a loss to give, but they'd rather hold on to it.
That's awesome to see, a player at his first Pro Tour coming off of a regional PTQ win, 8-2 at the Pro Tour. For all the viewers at home, that could be you.
I got to tell you, but there's a lot of great competition at those RTQs.
Oh yeah.
And I think the players who are emerging from there are showing themselves to be quite grizzled.
Yeah, just the way the new system works, having to win a tournament to qualify for the regional PTQ in the first place and then win that as well. I can't say for sure whether that leads to, a difference in quality of the people coming out of those kind of tournaments, but definitely, it's a program you want to get involved with if you have sights for the Pro Tour, just working your way up through there.
Another player who's playing on day 2 in his first Pro Tour came out through the RTQs was Oliver Tomiko. 15 years old, got through to day 2 here, and he was thrilled actually when the system changed over from PTQs to pre-TQs and RTQs, because he's like, I just want to play Magic every weekend, and try to get myself on the Pro Tour.
Yeah,
so he was just
really the great
traveling
thing.
Around to all the pre-TQs until he qualified for the RTQ, and then just full practice mode.
It's an awesome thing to be able to go to your local store and be engaged in that climb up to the Pro Tour, just right at home at your local store.
Yeah, so. And you can sort of say, wait for the shot to come around to your store, or you can chase after it and hit all the stores in the tri-state area, as many people I know have done. All right, and we're underway here in Game 3. Is that a salvage drone? So how important is ingest? Well, we're seeing a salvage drone in play, which is a card that is not as impressive as...
It's no sludge crawler.
As sludge crawler, yeah.
In the world of one mana 1/1s. Salvage
it doesn't quite replace itself, but it filters through your deck when it dies, but, that doesn't always feel that great.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, it's a 1 mana 1/1, but it's got just enough little value in different ways between its 3 abilities. Don't forget it's colorless also with Devoid there. That it often can make the cut just based on the accumulation of little synergies.
Well, I've had decks with 3 Merc Striders where I'm like, I just need ingesters to turn that on. And, it kind of feeds into it, right? Like, you start getting your salvage drone through because you're playing your Merc Striders.
And we've talked about this format's a little bit light on quality 2-drops, so a lot of times your opponent just doesn't play a creature till turn 3, and you're able to get in there, especially if you're on the play.
So John Stern jumps from 3 to 5 mana when he untaps for his next turn with a natural connection at the end of...
Guys done good work this match.
Yeah, Ricky's like, oh, I'm on camera and people can see that I'm playing Salvage Drone. I better talk them up. So, 3 cards. Well, a few cards in hand here. We see Belligerent Whiptail, Broodhunter Worm, just kind of a curve, staple kind of guy. He's just like, I'm here at 4. I do what I do. I'm not impressive. Belligerent Whiptail, the Plated Crusher, and a Touch of the Void. So, Grave Birthing for Ricky Chin. Is that a Blade Herder?
Is that Kozilek's Channeler?
Oh, Kozilek's Channeler. Okay. Oh.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
It is
Ulamog's
Ulamog's Despoiler. So he's able to put 2 cards from exile into John Stern's graveyard, and it comes in with 4+1/+1 counters on it. It is a 9/9.
Yikes.
So John Stern, yeah, your work is cut out for you. And Salvage Drone, job well done. Job well done, Salvage Drone. You may now chump block with impunity.
Did we just see a turn 5 9/9?
Yes.
From a blue-black deck
yes.
there from Ricky Chin? Wow. That is some synergy. Here comes a Rush of Ice.
Wow, Rush of Ice with Awaken. I'm attacking for 12. And oh, by the way, the Salvage Drone's getting into
That is some massive tempo. Tap and freeze your 6-drop. Animate my land. And attack for 13?
John's like, I so wanted to go 6-0 in this draft. I really did.
I have to imagine that Whiptail's trading with the land. Okay, we're getting a little bit.
A little frisky?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. John Stern figures, I need to get as much value out of what I've got if I want to win this game. I'm against a blue-black deck. They don't have many ways of dealing direct damage to me, so I can go a little bit low on life.
There you see Ricky getting a chance to loot off of the salvage drone, getting eaten.
So even more value off the little 1-drop that could.
So 7 mana means
I mean, I feel
that
like
the Plated Crusher
Plated
is
Crusher
online.
wants to come down, but is it even good here? Staring down a 9/9 that needs to be blocked. I suppose the Plated Crusher could block the land, and the Belligerent Whiptail could chump Ulamog's Despoiler. But,
You hear uphill battle from John Stern. I mean, great cards in hand here, right? Kozilek's Channeler, the Crusher, he's got a Touch of the Void. Sure, Brood Hunter Worm is replacement value, but...
Yeah, I don't see a lot of other plays other than the Plated Crusher. I mean, could Touch of the Void the land, and
Right,
play...
he could go Brood Hunter Worm, kill the land, and then...
The problem with that, though, would
he
be
can't double block
still
the-
one of the 4-drops
Yeah.
has to chump,
Yeah.
So I think this is the way, if there is a way.
Right, and he's just like, please, no Rush of Ice, please, no adverse conditions.
Meanwhile, Ricky Chin coming in for the clear attack here. Oh, double block on the Despoiler. I actually like this better than what I was imagining, which was a chump with the Belligerent Whiptail and picking off the land.
Yep.
It does drop John Stern to 2 life, though. And here comes Skyline Cascade, keeping that Tajuru Beastmaster locked down.
But there's still some play here for John Stern. He's got Touch of the Void and the Worm.
Yeah, the Worm, or a Kozilek's Channeler of his own. But I guess he'd probably rather play the Worm, given that he's going to block.
Exiles the land, plays the Worm, and suddenly
And
there's a Sludge Crawler in hand for Chin, which is actually could be a little bit of a problem as well. Yep.
yeah, that Sludge Crawler it threatens to trade with a real creature here.
Oh,
and
wow.
another Skyline Cascade. Wow. That Tajuru Beastmaster rather, entered the battlefield like 4 turns ago and hasn't gotten to do anything yet.
What are you going to do about the mighty Sludge Crawler, John Stern?
So good news, though, for John Stern. I believe he picked up Ruin Processor. Yep, and sure enough, there it is.
Oh, no, Spell Shrivel.
Spell Shrivel.
But
But-
he's going to gain the 5
Yeah, it
life
is a
no
cast
matter
trigger.
what, because that happens upon casting, yes. He goes to 8.
So he goes up to 7 and then takes 4 this turn back down to 3.
Now
And
his 5/5 finally gets to untap.
And it looks like Stern with Kozilek's Channeler, a Grove Rumbler, and whatever he drew this turn in his hand. Down comes the Grove Rumbler.
Valakut Predator.
Oh.
And he can actually attack. Scour from Existence is the card for Ricky Chin. He also has a swamp.
So that Sludge Crawler threatens to trade with both creatures now. With the 8th land coming down, it can go up to a 5/5. And that seems like it's the... Okay, opting to keep it on defense instead and hold up that Scour from
Yeah,
Existence.
he really wants John to pass the turn with just 1 creature back to block and then be able to end of turn
Yeah,
scour.
that makes a lot of sense. It is appealing there to try to force the 2-for-1 with the remaining
Right.
2 creatures.
You have enough life that even if he just chumps with 1, you're not unhappy.
Yeah.
Okay. John Stern goes to the top of his deck looking for a creature. Seek the Wild. You can get a creature or a land from the top 4. He doesn't really care about a land right here. We're Or does he? He's got 2 landfall creatures. 3 landfall. Well, 2. He takes the land.
Played land. Yes, resolve landfall triggers.
Yeah, it's a big landfall right there. So that Valakut Predator is a 4. The Rumbler is a 5.
Uh-oh.
Oh, but he's got... Does he have the blighted land that lets him go get 2 more lands?
Yeah, he sure does. Blighted Woodland.
Blighted Woodland.
So as of right now, that Valakut Predator is a 4/4, Grove Rumbler is a 5/5, and Drew Beastmaster is a 5/5. So that's 14 points of damage coming through. But the Blighted Woodland threatens to give 2 more landfall triggers, which would be an additional 8 points of damage for a total of 22. So Ricky Chen's going to have to do something here. Of course, we know he has Scour for Existence in hand.
He could just say, okay, and go to 1.
Yes,
Yeah, sack this for 2 landfall triggers.
that is true.
And that he
That,
does.
I think, is what's happening here. No blocks. John Stern goes for the 2 more landfall triggers. If Ricky Chin scours from Existence on the Grove Rumbler, he is only facing down 11 damage.
And there is the Scour from Existence. Get the Grove Rumbler out of this plane of reality.
Sorry, 13 damage, is that right? Yeah, 3 landfall triggers, so 8/8 on the Valakut Predator, 5 from the Beastmaster. Drops Ricky Chin to 2, and
Wow,
in comes
Ricky
the
Chin!
Sludge Crawler.
Wins his draft pod with blue-black processor.
On the back of some powerful 1-drops? Question mark?
Salvage Drone and Sludge Crawler. Salvage Drone set it up. Sludge Crawler knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very cool. We've seen a huge variety of cards played and limited here. Cards you might not expect to be very strong, to see a lot of success at the Pro Tour. And I think it's really just a testament to the depth of this limited format and the synergies that are there.
Welcome back to yeah. That was the big open question for us coming into this draft format was raw power versus synergy. And I think you look at a deck like Ricky Chin's and you look at a deck like Palovito Dominorosa's and you see the 2 different ways you can approach it. But that's it for limited. We're going back to standard and we're going back to the news desk.
All right, thanks so much to Brian David Marshall and Ian Duke with all the action there. Our limited coverage is done. But don't you dare go anywhere. Standard is going to be amazing, both down the stretch today and then in the top 8 tomorrow. It's lunchtime and we have, it's a smorgasbord. Is that the word? I think it might be. A smorgasbord of awesome stuff for you between now and the start of round 12. First of all, just a couple of quick results to bring you. Magnus Lanto is up to 8-3 at the expense of Paul Cheon. So Cheon on the edge at 7-4. Kind of destiny out of your hands at 4 losses. Someone may well get in, but that's kind of not up to you. That's about tie breaks and might not happen. It may be that you need 3 losses or fewer. So that's good news for John Finkel because he's at 8-3 now, defeating Jack Fogle, putting the 4th loss on Fogle. Paul Dean of Canada is up to 8-3. Other 8-3s, Pedro Carvalho, Brazil, haven't really mentioned him as he's worked his way up the standings over Peter McGuinness of the United States. The match you've all been waiting for, I'm certain, Sam Luca Rolfe of England defeats Matthew Barrett of Wales to go to 5-6. That's the big one of the day, as we all know. Andre Strasky up to 6-5, but that's not going anywhere. He's out of contention. Couple more big ones. Brandon Burton, 9-2. If you have not seen his story, I do urge you just to take a couple of minutes to go and look at our website. It's one of the great Magic stories. It's turning into one of the great Magic on the battlefield stories, never mind in real life away from the game. So have a look at that. Brandon Burton up to 9-2, defeating Brian Gottlieb, who falls to 8-3. Makita Mahara is 8-3. Owen Turtenwald, 9-2, defeated Corey Burkhart for the pod there. So Burkhart's still alive at 8-3. Martin Muller, 9-2, over Kenji Samura. We said Muller had a great deck. So that's just some of the results. We will go over the top of the standings. We'll look at all the draft pods coming out of the morning when we put a bow on our limited coverage about 10 minutes from now. But first of all, those of you who saw the first part of of Inside R&D. Well, it's time for part 2. We went to Seattle. We got to talk with the head designer, the designers, the developers, the artists, the flavor people, all the great game designers who work on Magic the Gathering for the story of Battle for Zendikar.
The Eldrazi literally have a huge impact on the plane of Zendikar. But who are the Eldrazi? Let's go inside R&D and see what we can do to make the unknowable knowable.
Eldrazi. Oh man.
The Eldrazi are unfathomable, unknowable. That is kind of their whole shtick. They are otherworldly. They're not even from physical space.
You could say things like unknowable. You could say inscrutable. You could say, beyond our comprehension. But ultimately, you can't just have blank cards.
Something that I watched for when I was working on the names and flavor text, the flavor text in particular, is never letting any of the flavor text talk or even really speculate about what might be going on in an Eldrazi's head. It knows, it sees, it remembers. No, none of that. It doesn't do those things. That's not how Eldrazi are.
Now, there's no greater advocate of the color pie than me, and one of the things the color pie does is it's a safety net. It says, hey, there's lots of good cards, but you can't play all the good cards. And when we did too much colorlessness, it's like, yes, you can. You can play all the colorless cards. And that was a problem. So I needed to solve the problem of, I wanted all the Eldrazi to be colorless, but I didn't want to break the color pie. How do I do that?
When I first heard that the design team was pitching these Ghost Fire cards, meaning cards that were colorless but had colored mana costs, I thought, what a nightmare.
My first day that I came to Wizards working as a graphic designer for Magic R&D, I was given the task to work on the devoid frames. Back then, we didn't know it was going to be a frame treatment. We thought it was going to be a color indicator bullet.
It's very hard in a visual way to say I'm not anything. Like, here's a circle, I'm not something. Well, what do you make the circle? Well, you can't not make it something. How do you convey that that's not, So there was no way to convey with a symbol like circle that I'm not something.
So at that point, I started working with design and development to look at when we wanted to see that card as red and when we wanted to see it as colorless. And we decided we wanted to read it as red when you're drafting, because that's when you're going to be looking more closely at what you can sort of afford to put in your deck. And we wanted it to look colorless on the battlefield when you're playing it, because that's when colorless matters in the mechanics.
We weren't sure we could be able to do the mechanic at all unless we knew we could nail it visually.
It was never planned as a mechanic. For the entire run of design, it wasn't a mechanic. It ended up becoming a mechanic because the only way to clearly define it was by calling it something. And so it ended up being called devoid.
When we're talking about adding this word that just completely defies your expectations, putting devoid on these cards and saying everything you knew about the cards before about how to tell what was true about them might not be true anymore. We were nervous. Yeah, I was very nervous.
So another reason I really like the colorless theme is we're not doing tribal anymore. Every Eldrazi doesn't say Eldrazi on it. And I wanted to have some way to do things that affected the Eldrazi, and I had no mechanical way of doing that by reference calling them Eldrazi. I mean, I could affect the creatures, because they're Eldrazi subtype, creature type, but I couldn't affect all the cards. So by doing colorless things, I could make things that cared about everything. And the wonderful thing about this is, the previous set was Khans of Tarkir. It had a morph theme. Morph our colorless creatures. And so we did this neat thing where, within the confines of this set, in Limited, it's all about the Eldrazi, but in Standard, the colorless matters actually plays in and combines with the set before it.
So Battle for Zendikar is mixing some of what we saw in Zendikar, the original Zendikar, where it was very aggressive, with what we saw in Rise of the Eldrazi, where it was all about ramping out mana to cast these expensive creatures. That means this set is combining both of these things. So Eldrazi Spawn needed to play more than one role. 0/1 tokens are by nature just defensive and just good for ramping you out. The 1/1 Eldrazi Scions both can attack and can provide mana to cast your big Eldrazi creatures.
So I go to Mark and I tell him they're playing a lot more fun as 1/1s. What do you think of spawns being 1/1s instead of 0/1s? And he tells me, if I knew that was allowed, I would have done it myself.
Creatively, we had an opportunity to really express this idea that left alone, the Eldrazi are going to get bigger, they're going to get meaner, they're going to get more powerful. They were slumbering for 6,000 years, but now they're kind of getting their bearings. So we really wanted to make sure it was loud that the Scions, these 1/1s, were not just these 0/1 spawns.
So we knew when we upgraded to 1/1 from 0/1 that another thing we were going to have to do is look at what we were giving you at these high mana costs and make sure we were giving you something that you were willing to sacrifice real creatures for.
The thing we wanted to do with Ulamog was absolutely clearly put across the idea that this character is really, really hungry and is just going to eat everything in sight. And so we have this gigantic creature that takes a 20-card bite out of your opponent's library every time he attacks.
We also wanted Ulamog to feel connected to the rest of the Eldrazi in this set. So every time we tried a new thing for the Eldrazi to be about, we sort of like reimagined Ulamog as being the best at that thing, or the lord of that thing.
One of the important considerations we had when we designed Oblivion Sower is that we knew we were going to have a big Eldrazi that was the face of the dual deck that's coming out with Battle for Zendikar, and we knew that whatever Eldrazi we put on the face of that dual deck, you want it to be really representative of the conflict between the Eldrazi and the Zendikari. And so when you think about what's Zendikar all about, well, it's the plane of exploration, it's the plane of lands, it has landfall, it has all these cool non-basic lands. And so what's the cruelest thing that an Eldrazi can do to Zendikar is to just like desecrate and steal and manipulate its lands. So we wanted to create an Eldrazi that in a very alien and Eldrazi way, it messed with your lands.
Desolation Twin was a favorite of the design team. They really were enamored with this idea of, let's actually give you 20 power worth of Eldrazi that unchecked could kill your opponent, you know, in a couple swings once you get through those defenses.
So Endless One is kind of like a Hydra, right? We have these Hydras in Magic that cost X and 1 or 2 colored mana, and you get a 0/0 with X +1/+1 counters on it. We realized that we had a unique opportunity here to make a Hydra that didn't have any colored mana symbols in its mana cost because the Eldrazi are colorless. We thought, can we do it? Can we really do this? Can we make an X that gives you X +1/+1 counters? Well, it turned out we could.
We wanted Eldrazi to be alien and weird and off-putting, and you know, a synonym for that is odd. And sort of jokingly in a meeting one day, we came up with like, what if the Eldrazi are really odd? And someone was like, well, what do you mean? Do you mean odd like strange, or odd like, you know, the parody of a number as in contrast to even?
It was a thing that felt very weird and arbitrary and served to illustrate that the Eldrazi just have totally different priorities than humans do. They're just thinking about completely different things than humans are, and who can understand them? They care about odd numbers. That's totally weird.
Usually when we develop sets, we only have so many large creatures, and whether a creature is 7/8 or 8/9 has a smaller impact on the game. They're just enormous. But now you have a 7/8 that gained you 5 life, and I have an 8/9 trample. Now they're really different because I'm going to attack, and if you block, yours dies and mine doesn't. And suddenly the enormous sizes, even though they're only a little different, it's as different as a 3/3 and a 2/2.
When you look at a card that has Devoid, we want you to have a sense that something is off about this card other than the frame and the Devoid. So for example, a card like Kozilek Sentinel is, you know, cost 1 and a red. You're used to seeing red creatures that cost 1 and a red. You're not so used to seeing cards that cost 1 and a red and are 1/4s.
So the Eldrazi are these massive interplanar beings, and what they do is consume. So they need lots of fuel. And Ingest is an ability that's going to give them that fuel. So Ingest is on creatures. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, that player is going to exile the top card of his or her library. Face up, everyone gets to see it. And those cards hanging out in exile, as we'll see in a bit, very useful for the Eldrazi side.
The Eldrazi have the ingest mechanic in this set, and this represents their voracious hunger. They're eating the entire plane and everyone in it. In the old Rise of the Eldrazi set, we had the Annihilator mechanic. We found that that could only go on really big creatures, and so we wanted something that was a little less board impactful that we could put on smaller Eldrazi, because we wanted to have Eldrazi of every size in this set. And then, so the ingest creatures, exile cards, and then we have these Eldrazi processors, which are a special type of Eldrazi that essentially digest the cards that have been ingested. They process them and turn them into energy that the Eldrazi can use.
So what a processor does is it takes cards an opponent owns from exile, puts it into that player's graveyard to get some effect. Now sometimes it's an activated ability, sometimes it's a triggered ability when the Eldrazi enters the battlefield. Each one's different, so read the cards carefully. But if you see processor, you know you're going to want to get cards from your opponents into exile so you can eat them for some awesome effects.
The reason that we ended up being okay with process in the way it works, taking these cards out of exile, is that in order for your opponent to get their exiled card back into their graveyard, you have to give it to them.
It was a really challenging mechanic to get right, but also really rewarding when we finally started to see the outcome of all of our effort happening in limited play and seeing those cool ingest decks come together. And it's just kind of a really unique experience that you can't get anywhere else in Magic.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk here. Rich Hagen here with you. We're in lunchtime and we are going to head now, turn our attention away from Limited and head towards Standard. We already had a look ahead of the tournament, wondering what we might see. Well, now we've got some data because 367 people turned in deck lists, and that means that Randy Buehler stayed up all night looking at them. And so we're going to find out what that means approximately now.